What makes a cigarette brand go from obscurity to becoming a global symbol of rugged independence? Imagine this. A product once designed for women, adorned with delicate packaging and soft slogans, is suddenly rebranded as the epitome of masculinity. Behind this dramatic shift was one of the advertising world's greatest minds, David Ogilvy, and the creation of an icon, the Marlboro Man. Today, we'll uncover how this campaign redefined marketing, transformed a struggling brand, and left a legacy that still echoes in advertising history. In the early 1950s, Marlboro was far from the rugged symbol we know today. In fact, it was marketed as a mild cigarette for women, complete with the tagline, "Mild as May." Its packaging featured a red band to hide lipstick stains, a far cry from the rugged image we now associate with the brand. But this approach wasn't working. Marlboro struggled to stand out in an increasingly competitive market dominated by larger, more established brands. Enter David Ogilvy, a rising star in the advertising world, renowned for his ability to transform perceptions. Ogilvy recognized something critical about human psychology. Brands aren't just products, they're identities. He knew that to save Marlboro, it needed to stop trying to fit in and instead stand for something bold, aspirational, and entirely different. Inspired by the rise of westerns in American pop culture, Ogilvy and his team crafted a campaign that would speak to a deeper cultural narrative, one of freedom, toughness, and self-reliance. The Marlboro Man wasn't just a character, he was a symbol of the American frontier spirit, an embodiment of masculinity, independence, and resilience. But here's the kicker. The campaign wasn't immediately successful. In its first few months, it seemed like a gamble that might not pay off, yet Ogilvy understood the power of consistency. He believed in the long-term impact of embedding a powerful story into the minds of consumers. Over time, this persistence began to pay off. And in 1955, when the Marlboro Man campaign was initially launched, sales were at $5 billion. But 2 years later, in 1957, sales were at $20 billion, representing a 300% increase. Marlboro sales skyrocketed, and the Marlboro Man would go on to become one of the most iconic figures in advertising history. Now, one of the most valuable lessons the Marlboro Man gives us is the importance of being first in your market, to carve out a unique identity. In the 1950s, the cigarette industry was saturated with brands competing on minor differences, flavor, price, or packaging. Marlboro could have stayed in the fight for these diminishing returns, but instead took a completely different approach. Rather than trying to outdo competitors on existing terms, Marlboro changed the game altogether. It didn't just reposition itself as a cigarette for men, it became the cigarette for men. By embracing a bold identity that no other brand dared to claim, Marlboro instantly stood apart. David Ogilvy understood that when you're the first to stake a claim in a market space, you're not just creating a campaign, you're setting the standard. By associating Marlboro with masculinity and independence, the brand became synonymous with those values. Even today, decades after the Marlboro Man first appeared, that identity remains firmly entrenched in the public consciousness. The first to claim a distinct position often wins the game. Instead of following the crowd, look for ways to redefine the market on your terms and become the leader in that space. Now, it's important to note great marketing takes time and consistency. The Marlboro Man didn't become an overnight success. In fact, the campaign's early results were far from extraordinary. Many companies would have scrapped the idea, chalking it up as a failed experiment. But David Ogilvy and his team understood something critical. Marketing is a marathon and not a sprint. In its first few months, the Marlboro campaign laid the groundwork for a long-term transformation. The rugged cowboy imagery and aspirational messaging didn't immediately translate into sales, but it began to seep into public consciousness. The team remained consistent, reinforcing the same narrative across multiple channels and campaigns until it became inescapable. Over time, the strategy paid off in a big way. By staying true to their vision and giving the campaign time to resonate with consumers, Marlboro experienced explosive growth. The lesson here is clear. Consistency builds trust, and trust builds brand loyalty. Today, we often see companies abandoning their campaigns far too quickly, chasing instant results or pivoting at the first sign of underperformance. But as Marlboro proved, the best campaigns are those that are given the time and space to grow. And we should all take away from this that effective marketing isn't about short-term wins, it's about playing the long game. Stick to your vision, stay consistent, and trust the process. Once the campaign gained traction, its success was largely driven by its storytelling. The Marlboro Man's ads featured minimal text but powerful visuals. Rugged cowboys and picturesque landscapes symbolized the independence every man wanted to feel. The consumer isn't a moron, she's your wife. Understand what people feel, not just what they want to buy. David Ogilvy. Ogilvy understood that great ads don't just sell products, they sell dreams. And Marlboro's dream was crystal clear: buy this cigarette and you're buying freedom and masculinity. Another amazing thing Marlboro was able to do was completely reposition its entire brand. Many companies out there would have been too fearful to do this and would have tried to cling on to the last remaining threads that were still viable. However, Marlboro didn't choose that option. Marlboro decided that if they were going to go down, they were going to go down shooting. And Marlboro's repositioning wasn't just about a new ad, it was a completely different brand by the time the Marlboro campaign came out. By embracing boldness and targeting the male demographic, Marlboro went from being a niche product to dominating the global market. And to quote one of Philip Morris's executives, "We weren't just selling the cigarette, we were selling the identity." The lesson here: if your brand is struggling, consider repositioning. Sometimes the market you're in isn't the one you're meant to lead. By claiming a new space, you can change your entire trajectory. Now, what truly made the Marlboro campaign so powerful, especially to men, wasn't just the rugged cowboy imagery, it was the story it told and the emotions it evoked. Marlboro wasn't just selling cigarettes, they were selling a lifestyle, a dream, strength, independence, freedom. These were the pillars of the brand. The campaign wasn't aimed at everyone. They focused on an audience that wasn't swayed by the emerging health risks of smoking. Instead, they doubled down on who valued freedom over fear, people who saw smoking as a personal choice, even a statement of defiance. Marlboro positioned itself as the brand for the unapologetic individual, the man who charted his own path. This was the genius of David Ogilvy's approach. He understood that facts rarely win hearts. Instead, he tapped into the timeless human desire for belonging and identity. Every puff of a Marlboro wasn't just about the nicotine, it was becoming the cowboy, embodying the spirit of resilience and self-reliance. And Marlboro leaned into that idea, turning cigarettes into a metaphor for something far greater. By forging a deep emotional bond, they created an ad campaign that transcended its product, embedding itself into the psyche of a generation. In advertising, emotions speak louder than logic. The Marlboro Man didn't just tell a story, he invited audiences to see themselves in it. That's the secret behind every iconic campaign, the ability to create a personal connection that lingers long after the ads end. For decades, Marlboro stuck with the Marlboro Man, creating a consistent, recognizable identity. Even as competitors tried to copy the rugged aesthetic, Marlboro's consistency ensured it stayed top of mind. By staying true to their vision, Marlboro didn't just build recognition, they built trust. And in marketing, trust is priceless. Now, of course, for every upside, there is a downside. The Marlboro Man faced backlash as the dangers of smoking became undeniable. Anti-smoking campaigns, legal battles, and advertising restrictions took their toll. But the Marlboro Man's legacy remains. A case study in how bold repositioning and consistent storytelling can turn a struggling brand into a global powerhouse. In 2023, Philip Morris International, the parent company of Marlboro, remains the largest tobacco company in the world, with an estimated market value of $155 billion. Now, as the Marlboro Man rides off into the sunset on his horse, it's important to know he didn't just sell cigarettes, he sold the American dream. And his story is proof that with the right strategy, a brand can redefine itself, dominate its market, and create an enduring legacy. Now, I have an important question to ask you guys at the end of this video. What's the most daring marketing campaign you've ever seen? What was the riskiest one that really stood out in your mind? Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work, but at least they tried. That's what I want to hear from you guys. Now, if you have any marketing questions that you want me to answer or any ideas for future videos, consider leaving a comment down in the comment section down below. Also, if you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel for more content to come. It really does help our channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. Other than that, you guys have a wonderful day. Take care, and I wish you all well.